I met a gypsy.
What do you think mountain biking suspension could do to improve? Like, do you think that there's low-hanging fruit there?
I do. I think a lot of times it's driven again by sales. So like they want a lot of external adjustments. They can say that the bike on the showroom floor has high speed and low speed compression rebound, so 4 ways of adjustment. When we don't really need all that, I think you can,
Yeah.
and it doesn't always do exactly what it says either. Like just because you have that doesn't mean, and a lot of the customers wouldn't even know if it did what it said. You can have a simpler shock and do a lot more inside the shock. Just it takes more resources, but just tuning the shock for each bike.
Yeah.
Rather, a lot of companies too, it's easier. Most of their sales are OEM, so they'll create a product that they have to sell to a product manager, and they will try to win the bid by making them happy, so they spec it on their bike. And making it easy to tune for a variety of sizes. Like one shock for all riders is easier to sell when you could dial it in for the intended use a little bit easier and a little bit more simply if it didn't have to cover such a wide range.
And so you would rather, like, so what's the fix for that? Like, so do you think that companies should focus, like, let's say you had a suspension company and you were like making your own suspension for your own bike. What are you doing differently on that bike?
Depending on what customer is looking for it, I would just work with them to make it specific for.
Yeah.
And I don't really know enough about like sales either. Like it is tough because if you sell the shock, it needs to work for a variety of body types. But doing it for racing anyway, just figuring out who's using it, what their weight is, what their speed is, and creating a shock that didn't have as much external adjustments and was just kind of set up to match the forces of that are being put into it.
Yeah. We did. It's so true that you say that. Like, I got a set of Showa A kit for my KTM, and you get them out of the box, and it's like, yeah, they feel pretty good, but they're just not even close. And then after, like, I rode for probably 2 months on them, and then once they really bed in, once the oil gets old, like, they just turned into unrideably soft. And it's like, it took working with a guy from Showa, revalve, fresh oil, and then I think he made one valving change, but the biggest change that I could actually feel on the track was he just removed a bit of oil. Mm-hmm. And that gave the best feeling that it had all day, you know? So yeah, even like the best, most expensive suspension that you can buy, basically, it's taking a little bit of oil out, and it's like just doing these little things that actually makes the difference, you know?
Yeah, and if you're working, now that you know that that's the feeling you're looking for, it's probably easier to replicate the second time.
Yeah, we literally did on my other bike. I was like, it just feel like if it would feel like halfway through the stroke, it just got super hard, like, and out of balance with like the actual, like, it wasn't progressive at that point. It was like it ramped up super quickly. So yeah, we just took 10 mil oil out of that set of forks too. It's like, all right, sweet. Like, that actually makes a huge difference, you know?
Yeah, and one thing we've been doing on the bikes too is recording a lot of the data. So we'll record all of our runs at World Cups. A lot of times not.
Oh, really? Even in race runs?
I've done it a lot in quali runs.
Okay, yeah.
Not as much in race runs. But I have done some race runs for sure, and at US races I've done it a lot in racing. And just to have like the shaft speed recorded, we can correlate like what a good feeling was to one that we didn't like. And if you would have had that on the track the day that you liked the suspension, you'd probably be a lot easier to replicate that and tell them like,
so hey, you just take that one data to the next track and then try and replicate.
Well, if it's feeling bad, you can compare the two and be like, hey, this day it was feeling good. This is the numbers that we had. This is how the shock was moving. This day it's not feeling good. What's the difference?
Yeah. I wonder how much data acquisition you can get in moto. I feel like I've seen it at KTM test track before, but it's like way more bulky and way different to use. Or maybe it hasn't made its way into the sport like it's not as accessible as maybe it is in mountain biking. I'm not sure.
I don't know a lot about how they do it for Supercross. I'm sure they have test riders that can record a lot of the stuff and sort through everything. That way the pros only have less options to work through.
Yeah.
But I'm sure they know exactly what the shaft speeds are.
Yeah. What's the like the company that makes the stuff that you guys use? Does the suspension companies make their own like testing kits essentially?
The suspension companies don't. There's two that we use. One's called Motion Instruments, and the other is BYB Tech. And we've been using the BYB one more. Now they're more accessible. Like I think a kit's less than $2,000.
Really?
And you get the potentiometer, which is like the tracer that measures the shock and the fork.
Yeah.
And the data logger as well. Like back in the day, people had to build their own kits. You just got like a data logging box that had as many inputs as you wanted, and then you can plug it's not just for bikes, could be used for anything.
Yeah.
And that's what like Loic and his mechanic, they built their own years ago, and they were the only ones doing it.
Huh.
And now there's available to the public systems that you can buy, which is why you see more people using it now.
Yeah, right. It would be interesting to try and do it because I'm sure like the factories have it. Like, I mean, I've seen it at test tracks and stuff like that, but I wonder because the average person, I think as well, just doesn't really think that they're like capable or qualified, which like essentially they're kind of not. But there is a process. Like at one point you weren't this knowledgeable about all of this, and it's like you just kind of go through this process. Like I wonder if there is a lot to gain for like the average moto dude that's into it and wants to learn this stuff in getting a kit or like building a kit and logging their own data and like trying to figure it out.
I think there's definitely marginal gains to be made. I think you can do a lot before going that deep.
Yeah.
And as you know, man, sometimes all the electronics are more headache than they're worth. But yeah, I think the biggest thing sometimes people make a mistake with is wanting to make changes with it before getting a lot of data points. Like that was one thing we did. We like for the first year we just recorded a lot. We didn't really like look at every run and say like, oh, what's the bike doing? We need to change something. It's hard enough to be consistent without changing anything. So we just tried to record a lot of data, just to have it, just to look over, and then start to get some correlations of what we liked and what we didn't like before rushing into changes.
Yeah. So were you using the data as like correlation, causation kind of thing? So you would take the data and then compare it with how you felt, and were you using that to then like build up your own feeling or intuition in a sense?
Yeah, in a lot of ways. Yeah, I'd look at days that I was happy with the bike and other days that I wasn't, and try to just pick some like correlations as to why.
And so, were you good at this stuff at school as well? Like, is math and geometry and like, or is this stuff that is just purely learned through? Because I think people can learn a lot through just like the want to learn something.
No, I mean, my last math class was in 10th grade. My last 2 years of high school, I missed a lot of school to go racing. I was going and racing the junior category. So I did online school for 1 year, and then my senior year went back to my high school, but just missed so many days that like I wasn't planning to go to college, so I didn't take a lot of stuff. Like Algebra 2 in 10th grade is like a pretty basic course. And I laughed because I was talking to my friend from Santa Cruz, and he was sending me some of their bikes that they were working on and saying like, oh, this is a little bit too progressive. And I looked at it, I was like, it's not as progressive as you say. How are you guys doing that calculation? And I told him like, this is how I do it. It's like starting minus ending divided by starting is like the rate of change. And he's like, oh, we were doing it wrong the whole time. Like you were right. And I was like, well, I took math class, Algebra 2 in 10th grade. If you got any more questions, just let me know.
Dude, that's insane.
So all the stuff with the bike, I just figured out, like if you're passionate about something and you like it and you can feel the difference when you're riding the bike, and it's easy to start to understand and learn what those things do.
We're excited to announce the launch of our new membership site, gypsytales.com, packed with exclusive content and perks that you won't find anywhere else. This is your chance to become a part of the Gypsy Gang. And as a special bonus, if you sign up to an annual membership, you'll be entered into the draw to win our custom-built TC125. Gypsy Gang.